Manchester. I'm State Representative Heidi Hamer. I represent Ward 10 in Manchester, District 17, Hillsborough. I first want to thank John Hopwood, for the regular host of the show, Ward 13, for allowing us to use his show this week. We will introduce two Democratic candidates for governor this year. Dan Feltus and Andru Volinsky will be on the primary ballot September 8th. I am privileged to introduce you to Senator Dan Feltus. Dan has represented Concord's District 15 since 2014. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Heidi. It's great to be here with you.
Tell us, Dan, why are you running and how do you differ from our current governor?
Well, look, Heidi, we have to get out of this mess in a way that looks out for working people and working families. And that's who I am. That's where I come from. That's what I've done my entire life. My dad worked in a furniture factory for 45 years, the same one doing roughly the same job day in and day out in an unair-conditioned furniture factory. Fortunately, steelworker organized for decent pay and benefits. My mom, she did part-time jobs, including the night shift, while raising 4 kids. And right out of law school, I served as a legal aid attorney with New Hampshire Legal Assistance, representing low to middle income granted staters, senior citizens, fighting for veterans who have fought for us for the VA benefits they earned, they're entitled to, helping to lift people up as best I could, including during the last economic crisis, the Great Recession, battling Wall Street banks who were foreclosing on folks all around New Hampshire, helping with unemployment insurance and job training, helping to lift people up and get out of that mess, seeing a lot of the same people falling through the cracks now that fell through the cracks then. In the state Senate, Heidi, every step of the way, fighting for working people and working families. We've made a lot of progress working together. Medicaid expansion reauthorization, prescription drug relief, initiatives that you and I have worked on together to expand opportunity and healthcare access for granted staters, but all too often, we ran up against the same roadblock. 77 vetoes from Governor Chris Sununu, 60 of them bipartisan support, and calls himself, in his words, a Trump guy through and through, unquote. That's not my words. Those are Governor Chris Sununu's words. And I have a distinctly different background. My dad wasn't governor. My brother wasn't a U.S. senator. I was never gifted a ski resort. I've always been looking out for working people and working families. And if we're going to get out of this mess, Heidi, we got to look out for working people again. We can't be doing the kinds of things that Sununu has argued that we should do. Corporate immunity for big corporations who put their workers at risk in COVID-19. Not doing a school reopening plan. No public health standards and no support for our schools from Chris Sununu. He just punted it all down to the local level. That's not leadership. People expect leadership, strong leadership right now. That's what we need. Leadership that looks out for working people and working families. That's why I'm running. If I have the honor and privilege of serving as your next governor, each and every day I go into that corner office, I will fight for working people and working families every step of the way. When we replace Chris Sununu with some legal aid lawyer from the south end of Concord, I respectfully ask for your vote and your support. We've got to win this if we're going to really get out of this mess in a way that looks out for ordinary people.
Thank you. You know, certainly the biggest challenge we face right now is the pandemic. So do you think we should have a mask mandate?
Yes, I mean, we're the last state in New England that has any public mask requirement. I think a common sense public mask requirement is in order. I mean, it's one thing if you're out walking your dog by yourself in your neighborhood. It's another thing if you're in a public space, a place of public accommodation, like a grocery store or at a public event. You certainly should be wearing a mask. The science is clear. Masks prevent the spread. And it's a common sense public health initiative that Governor Chris Sununu has yet to do. And even in advance of the NASCAR race, didn't do it. In advance of Bike Week, didn't do it. And every step of the way, he's been looking out for the same kind of politics that Donald Trump has been engaging in. And he didn't issue a public health order for Donald Trump's rally that was going to happen on the Seacoast. So every step of the way, when he says he's a Trump guy through and through, you better believe it, because every step of the way, he's acting like it. And, we need something different. We need to look out for public health. We need a plan. We need to work with our schools. Look, so many people are going through this right now. It's so uncertain right now. And all that teachers and students and folks on the ground wanted was some semblance of certainty and support and public safety and public health going into the school year. Chris Sununu provided none of it. He just threw up his hands. and said it's all on you at the local level. I'm of that fundamental belief we are all in this together, not you're on your own, not the Chris Sununu approach. You know, my family, my wonderful wife Erin, our two amazing daughters, Iris and Josie. It's about our collective future, and we all are in this together.
Yeah, not much direction was given by our current governor and education commission about opening up the schools. And sounds like, you know, you would have done it differently and safer.
Absolutely.
Safer.
Yeah, absolutely, Heidi.
Thank you.
And we put out what we call the Live Free and Learn Safe plan, a comprehensive public health plan for our schools, actual public health standards, and real support for our schools. And I'll just go over a few elements of what were in there. First and foremost, treating our teachers with respect. The average teacher spends $423 out of pocket each year on school supplies to do their own job. They shouldn't be spending money out of pocket to be safe in schools right now. So under the plan, we provide medical grade N95 masks to every teacher in the state. We provide 5 reusable cloth face coverings for every student in the state. That's something North Carolina did. If North Carolina can do it, certainly New Hampshire can do it. We require masks, middle school, high school, and use on buses. And we lay out clear guidance on what happens with buses, with meals, and what happens when a kid gets sick. Look, this is important. I mean, you cannot just let this happen in real time on the ground. If a kid gets sick, there should not be a debate in real time between teachers and parents and folks at the local level. This is a public health issue. And it requires leadership at the state level to stand up and say, here's what we're going to do. And Trump said it's not his responsibility. And Chris Sununu threw up his hands and he punted it to the local level without any financial support either. And, you know, we provide in this Live Free and Learn Safe plan $100 million in CARES Act money to make sure that we take care of our schools. Maine just provided $165 million to support their schools, the HVAC systems, the upgrades, the plexiglass, the masks that all are needed, cleaning supplies, etc., that are a burden on our schools and a burden on property taxpayers. And if we want to support our schools, we want to support property taxpayers, and we want to support working families and our business community who want the certainty too, who have employees, who have kids in school. If we want to move our economy and our state forward in a way that's healthy and safe and with safe communities, there needs to be a statewide plan with public health standards and support. Chris Sununu failed to do his job.
Thank you. You know, supporting small businesses, what would you be suggesting to do for that during this pandemic?
Thank you, Heidi. A number of things. First, I think we ought to be supporting our small business community with free PPE. And that's legislation that you and I and others worked on at the State House. House Bill 1166 would have provided free PPE to small businesses in the granite state. It used to be that for a while there that businesses could get PPE through the state. Governor Chris Sununu took that away. He put all the PPE at the liquor stores, and you had to go and buy it at cost. And well, those small business owners shouldn't be competing with healthcare providers and with everybody else who's scrambling for PPE. The small business owners ought to be supported with PPE. They also ought to be supported, and by the way, Governor Chris Sununu vetoed our bill to support small businesses with PPE. Small businesses also need to be provided with support with job training and linking up with employees right now. It's more important now than ever that happens, that we match up our workforce with the available jobs, small business owners. So part of that legislation also waived the cost sharing for small businesses for the public-private partnership and job training and skills matching. And Chris Sununu vetoed that too. So those are just 2 concrete ways that we can support our small business community. But the overarching thing here, Heidi, is by supporting our small businesses and supporting workers, we are actually supporting public safety, because worker safety is public safety. And on top of that, a critical thing that we need to do and finally move forward on, something I've led on, you've worked on, Heidi, is paid family and medical leave insurance. It's all too often, it's only the big corporations that are able to provide it. And small businesses lose out, and their workers lose out. And it's a critical element to how we move New Hampshire forward. For working families, families with a new kid, Aaron and I were fortunate with Iris and Josie that we were at a session with both Iris and Josie, and Aaron had access to paid family leave. That's not the case for most Granite Staters. And on top of that, it's not just about that. It's about 3 other things that paid family and medical leave is so important for. Combating our opioid epidemic. The number one cited reason why people do not get into intensive inpatient services is the absence of paid family and medical leave. Our caretaking crisis, caring for seniors and grandparents who may be in hospice. And finally, COVID-19. If paid family and medical leave insurance was in place when this COVID-19 thing hit us, there'd be so much more economic, social, and healthcare security for our families. Chris Sununu not only vetoed paid family and medical leave insurance, my bill last year, he actually auctioned off a copy of the veto at a partisan political fundraiser to the highest bidder. And not only that, auctioned off the U.S. flag and the New Hampshire flag, flown over the State House the day he vetoed paid family leave. So make no mistake, folks, Chris Sununu does not support paid family and medical leave insurance, despite what he says around election time. So that's critical to supporting our small businesses as well.
Yeah. Thank you. Paid family leave was a big one for me, too. I took care of my mother years ago, and I was able to take off from work, but
yeah,
I've fought for this, too.
Absolutely.
So, here in New Hampshire, taking the pledge against broad-based tax has been important, and there seems to be a difference between you and your opponent. Can you tell me more?
Sure. Well, I don't support a broad-based income or sales tax. And look, the reality is that working folks are already struggling. Imposing a broad-based income tax on them, I don't think is fair to teachers and nurses and plumbers and carpenters and people on the ground. You know what is fair? Doing, Heidi, what we did in the last budget and continuing down that road. In that last budget, we closed loopholes for big multi-state, multinational corporations to secure $140 million in new public school education funding for our communities, relieving pressure on property taxpayers. There are a whole bunch more loopholes for people at the top and big corporations at the top. Look, I think those folks at the top and those big corporations should pay their fair share before middle-class Granite Staters take it on the chin even more. And they're taking it on the chin in property taxes. So we need to secure even more progressive budgeting to close those loopholes, to invest in our communities, invest in education, and make sure that we relieve pressure on property taxes. In addition to that, I happen to believe the best investments we can make as a society and the investments we make in our kids. They're Iris and Josie's future, my daughters, our daughters. They're all of our daughters. They're all of our sons. They're our collective future, and they deserve a foundation for success and opportunity that's as strong as the granite under our soil. This is about building a bigger and better and brighter future for them and all of us, and taking care of them and giving them the opportunity they need. And so you've led on this. Manchester itself got about $20 million in additional support in that last budget, and I appreciate your leadership in helping to do that. We need to protect that budget and then build off of it. And that's what's at stake in this election. You may recall that Chris Sununu, after vetoing the budget, wanting the education funding out that we just talked about, he ended up accepting the budget. Not only that, well, he had to accept it. And then he went around with these big, large, oversized checks to try to take credit for it. And then right after doing that, he wrote a letter to superintendents of schools saying, I consider that one-time spending. Don't make any long-term plans. So look, he's all over the place on this. Yeah. But the reality is he called our budget the Ferrari of public school education budget. I don't think anybody on the ground thinks it's a Ferrari. And we need to support public school by closing more of those loopholes for those at the top and big corporations to invest in our communities, invest in our people, our kids, and relieve pressure on property taxes.
Thank you. Senator, what would your top priorities be as governor?
Well, first and foremost,
I know we've talked a lot, about different things so far, but
yeah, I appreciate that. First and foremost, we have got to get out of this mess in a way that looks out for ordinary people. And the biggest thing on the horizon is just healthcare generally. access to affordable, quality health care across the spectrum, reproductive health care, paid family and medical leave insurance, emphasizing the medical, making sure that behavioral health crisis is dealt with and COVID-19 is dealt with. And just taking the latter issue for an example, we all work together on legislation to help with our nursing homes and health care of our nursing home residents. Chris Sununu vetoed it. We have amongst the worst in the nation COVID-19 crisis in our nursing homes. Over 300 Granite State seniors have been lost to COVID-19, a lot of whom right here in Manchester. And as a legal aid lawyer, I used to represent folks in nursing homes. They're among our most vulnerable, and the true reflection of a society, it's been said, is how a society treats its most vulnerable. And the failure to protect under Governor Sununu nursing home residents has been, in my view, unconscionable. And then vetoing our legislation to help plan, to help support nursing homes, and to do an independent review of what happened with recommendations for a second wave, that's a failure to plan. And so healthcare across the board is absolutely critical. One other piece on the COVID-19. We passed legislation waiving the cost sharing for COVID-19 testing and treatment to make sure everybody has access to healthcare on COVID-19. That's a public health issue. It's not just the right thing to do, it's a public health issue for all of us. And that was vetoed by Governor Chris Sununu. So when I say the singular obstacle to meaningful and inclusive and bipartisan progress in the state of New Hampshire is Chris Sununu, I mean it. 77 bills and counting, 60 of which had bipartisan support. And he even went in, you may recall, Heidi, to the Republican caucus on veto override last year and said, your vote on veto override, it's not about the issues or your constituents. It's about me and protecting my veto. That's not public service. That's the antithesis of public service. That's not why you should get into this. And that's Washington, D.C. style politics coming straight to Concord, brought to you by the Sununu family.
Yeah. Any final thoughts, Senator, for the viewers? I mean, you've talked quite a bit and very good points.
Well, thank you, Heidi.
Plug it away.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you to everybody who's listening. These are incredibly uncertain times. What should be certain is strong leadership to help you and your family and our communities and our schools. We're not seeing it from Governor Chris Sununu. Yes, he does better at press conferences than Donald Trump, who he calls, in his own words, he's a Trump guy through and through. But that's not enough. Press conferences and photo ops are not enough. Leadership is required right now. Not everybody's going to get everything right. But my life and my experience has taught me that looking out nonstop with the laser beam, helping local families, working people, working families, that's what this is all about to me. Lifting people up, not tearing people down. Fight to include more people in our democracy and economy, not exclude them. And work for a relief and recovery effort that works for everybody, not just those at the top. If I have the honor and privilege of serving as your next governor, each and every day I walk into that office, that's my guidepost. That's who I'm going to fight for. I'm going to fight for working people and working families. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. Thank you so much, Heidi.
Thank you, Senator Dan Feltus, for your time today. And good luck on September 8th.
Thank you very much.
And now we will take a short break and come back with Connie Van Houten, Representative Connie Van Houten, who will interview Executive Council member Andru Volinsky, running also for governor. Thank you.
Thank you.
In Manchester, we've made a little bit of a switch. You'll see that I'm no longer Heidi Hamer. I am now State Representative Connie Van Houten. I currently represent District 45, which is wards 10, 11, and 12 along the west side, and I'm in my second term as a representative of that district. We continue our theme of meeting the candidates today. We are currently waiting for a phone call from Executive Councilor Andru Volinsky. It is my understanding that Andy has been involved with the Executive Council today and that the meeting has gone a little bit long, so we're waiting for that phone call to come in. In the interim, perhaps we should talk a little bit about what's going on in the registration format. Heidi, would you be willing to talk about it this time, or do you want to wait? I do have Heidi on set. I will clarify one point for you. The two of us are socially distanced, and being on set in the studio, I believe, is totally acceptable within that format. However, we both remain masked. We are both committed to the idea that COVID-19 is an a pandemic. It's even more than an epidemic that needs to be harnessed. And every little bit that we can do as individuals will help to take care of the multitudes. So while we wait for the phone call, I wasn't going to do this, but I've put Heidi on the spot. While we wait for the phone, I'm going to stop. I believe I have the phone call coming in. Brendan?
Hi, it's Andy Volinsky.
Hi, Andy. It's Connie Van Houten. Let me give you a quick little introduction, and then we'll talk. Andru Volinsky is the way I probably should refer to him. He's an executive council member representing Council District 2 since 2017.
2.
Yes, Council District 2. I apologize for that. Since 2017, is that correct?
Yes.
All right, perfect.
2017.
Now, have we caught you off guard? Are you coming out of an executive council meeting at this moment, or are you good to go?
I'm good to go, but your phone is coming in and out on me.
Okay, I'll move a little closer to the microphone. I am wearing a mask, and I think perhaps that's making a difference. Is this better?
This is better. I was losing part of what you were saying.
Perfect.
Sorry.
It's really a pleasure to kind of see you today, Andy, and to be able to talk to you. I think I'll start with the question that everybody is probably asking you right off the bat anyway.
Connie, I can't hear most of what you're saying. It's bad.
Sure.
coverage.
Let me give you your reign. Tell us what you'd like us to know about you.
I couldn't even hear that question. Can you? I can't hear you.
Okay, I made a technical adjustment. Is that any better?
Every other word.
I apologize for that. I am in the studio and trying to do what I can. How's this?
A little better.
I'm sure this doesn't make for great television, but Andy, why don't we do this? If you can hear what I'm saying right now, let me just give you an opportunity to speak for yourself as to who you are and why you are running.
Okay, so I am Andru Volinsky. I'm running for governor. Many people will know that I was the Claremont School funding lawyer, and I led a team of volunteers who exposed just how unfairly our schools are funded and then how that undermines quality education for so many children in our state. Not only did we expose the problem, we convinced the Supreme Court to recognize for the first time in New Hampshire history the constitutional right to a state-funded public education. Those were bold ideas, but for lack of courageous leadership, we never really fulfilled the promise of those Claremont cases. I am running for governor to fulfill those promises for the children in school, for the taxpayers who deserve fairness, for the seniors who are desperately trying to stay in their homes and are afraid of being taxed out of them, for the young and working families that are trying to get into homes. All of those people deserve a fair tax system that works for New Hampshire. That's why I'm running. And a lot of this, quite frankly, is my own personal experience. I grew up in a mill town where the mill failed. My dad was a mechanic, maintenance man, and a union shop steward. My mother was a homemaker. I'm the only one in my family to have gone to college. I went on scholarship. I paid for law school by working as a carpenter. I understand the benefit of educational opportunity. It's a question of economic justice. And my experience both in Claremont and in my own life and understanding the importance of education lead me to the conclusion that New Hampshire is being held back. I will never take the pledge. The pledge is promised to fail, and we need to succeed. What we've been doing is not sustainable, and I am running to really advance our state in terms of education and all of the other important things that a state should do.
Well, thank you, Andy. As you know, education is a prime concern of mine, and I would just like to add to what you said. I would not be sitting here today, probably, at least in the state legislature today, were it not for education. My family background was one that did not predispose us to go into college, and like you, I understand the importance of education. Are you able to hear me at this point?
Yes. This
Perfect.
is better.
And I apologize for the technical difficulties earlier. For those of you just turning in, I have Executive Counselor Andru Volinsky on a remote connection, and we have just talked a bit about why he's running for governor. And I'd like to switch gears a bit. Obviously, something on most people's minds right now is the pandemic. It is paramount in many minds, and there are certainly very big challenges that we face. Let me ask you a few questions related to that. Let's start with the obvious one. How do you feel about having a mask mandate in the state of New Hampshire?
We should have a mask mandate. I confronted Sununu about this at the very beginning of April, asking him to use an emergency order to put a mask mandate in place. Sununu told me public health data did not support the effectiveness of wearing a mask. Sununu was dead wrong. We should do it.
Another question related to that. Obviously, there are many people across the spectrum who are being impacted greatly by this pandemic. Small business in particular is taking quite a bit of a hit. What do you think should be done to better support small businesses in New Hampshire?
I missed most of your question.
Okay, I'll try again.
Sorry.
Small business, how do we better support them in the global pandemic?
How are we going to support global small business in New Hampshire during the pandemic?
That's it.
We need to do a few things. First, businesses pay twice as much in business taxes. Businesses pay twice as much in property taxes they pay in business taxes. So if we bring the property tax under control, we help businesses. That's number one. Number two, we need to make big advances on broadband to encourage the economic development of businesses, new businesses, expansion of existing businesses. We need to treat broadband as a utility so that the companies that have the franchises are required to provide acceptable services to everyone within their franchise. We need to get our arms around electricity rates. A lot of that involves using renewable energy and making that a Hampshire business priority. We need to have more and better educated employees to staff our businesses. This includes improving K-12 education broadly across the state and making community college as inexpensive and in some instances free as best we can. We also need to figure out opportunities to help businesses pay for health care. That's an important aspect of running a business on the HR side. There are some things that New Hampshire can do to make that more available to businesses, and that would give us a real New Hampshire advantage.
It's obvious that there are many facets to how we can work with this global pandemic and the legislature, and you've touched upon one that, again, is kind of near and dear to my heart. There's a lot of controversy across the state as to how we should open schools, whether we should remotely open them, whether we should open on-site, whether there should be a hybrid model. And remarkably, there's not much guidance from the Office of the Governor or from the Commissioner of Education. What would be your recommendation going forward?
Well, we're losing options. So if we had planned for opening when we should have planned, which would have been late spring, early summer, we could have had a range of options. We could have made sure that schools that needed resources got those resources for things like air exchange systems, for outdoor facilities, for additional staffing. But because Sununu and Edelblue were more interested in listening to Betsy DeVos than in the New Hampshire task force, nothing's been done. All of the districts basically have been left on their own, stranded without guidance or assistance from the state. So where I am right now, I'm having a hard time picturing how in most of the state we can open at the beginning of September. I'm not 100% there yet, but for the safety of the children and the school personnel, I'm starting to think more and more that we have to be mostly remote, maybe hybrid through October as we assess the advancement of the virus and our ability to cobble together the resources that are necessary. And let me mention one of the things near and dear to my heart, having worked so hard on education and having a son who's a middle school science teacher. I hate to think about this, but by emergency order, the governor should immediately create a presumption that if any teacher or other school personnel gets sick with COVID while schools are open, they are presumed to have caught it at work and entitled to workers' comp and, God forbid, death benefits.
It does seem as though there's so much going forward that we don't understand, that we don't know, and I agree with you. Planning for safety is a daunting responsibility, and it's a responsibility that you, should you become governor, will have a great role to play in it. And we, Heidi Hamer is on set with me right now, that we as members of the legislature will be looking to support the governor in, and we look forward to guidance for that. And we look forward, of course, to a day when schools can open as they have in the past, to when social emotional learning can also be brought to the table as opposed to remotely brought into homes. You mentioned education, and I do have a few more seconds here. Education funding. Could you elaborate a little bit more on that? I think many of us know that you have a very deeply entrenched idea for how to do that appropriately, and I'm aware of your stick. And
well, I don't know about deeply entrenched.
I know, probably word choice not correct. I apologize.
I know more about school funding than anyone who's ever run for governor, and we put that knowledge to use. So New Hampshire relies more heavily. We are worst in the nation in relying on local property taxes to pay for our schools. That means that you have a quilt of funding from one community to the next to the next. Manchester spends the least on its children of any school district in the state by thousands of dollars below the average. And Manchester is the most diverse community with a significant percentage of children on free and reduced lunch, which means Manchester has high costs yet spends the least. That is a terrible combination. So we need to have what I call the adult conversation of what are the options to get us off the over-reliance on the property tax. And for me, that means all options need to be on the table. Our goal needs to be to reduce property taxes for the majority of New Hampshire citizens, to improve school funding where it is the lowest, and to improve school quality where it is of the lowest quality. That's what I'm about. And using the bully pulpit as governor, I would push for the legislature to put together a package that meets those goals.
Thank you. Andy, when it's all said and done, assuming that you are able to become governor, what do you expect to be your top priorities, and what do you expect you'd be able to accomplish after a term or perhaps a few more years at the corner office?
So if I am fortunate enough to become governor, I will be taking office during a multi-headed crisis. There's the pandemic, there's economics, there's climate change, we can't forget that, and there's racial injustice crises, all happening at the same time. And as governor, you need to be able to multitask and bring in people to deal with all of that. So on COVID, we need to get the virus under control with social distancing, masking. I provoked a discussion today at the Executive Council about how we would do mass vaccinations. The answer is the Department of Health and Human Services isn't real sure how this is going to play out. That's a problem. We need to be thinking about that. We need to get to more regular schools as we move forward. So on the COVID crisis, we need to bring this under control. On the economic crisis, New Hampshire doesn't have a minimum wage. We default to the federal minimum wage. We need to move it to $15 an hour so that our neighbors and friends and other people in our community can have a sustainable standard of living. New Hampshire also has the lowest cap on unemployment. It's $427 per employee, regardless of how many dependents you have, and no matter how much you earned before you lost your job. That can't stay at worst in New England. That needs to improve. On climate change, we need to stop building fossil fuel infrastructure. That's why I was the only candidate so strongly opposed to the Granite Bridge fracked gas $400 million pipeline. That's been pulled. That shows my judgment was right on that project, but we have to be careful that these utilities don't come up with other projects that take us in the wrong direction for decades. And the final crisis that I mentioned was of racial justice. We do have systemic racism in New Hampshire. I don't care that Chris Sununu refuses to recognize it. It affects our law enforcement. It affects our health care outcomes. It affects how economics work in our state. Those are all areas that I'm going to work on if I'm elected governor.
Thank you, Andy. We have just a few minutes left, and so what I'll ask you to do is simply to speak to the citizens of Manchester of anything that you wish, your final thoughts as we come to our closing segment.
I would say to the people of Manchester, we're all in this together. You have a school funding crisis, and it is not your fault. You're stuck in a system that is not sustainable. Someone needs to call out the fact that our school funding system doesn't work, and we need to stop defaulting to the Republican narrative. The property tax is the broadest based tax that we could have. If you live in New Hampshire, you pay the property tax directly or indirectly. Mitt Romney on the lake pays $7 in taxes per thousand. In Manchester, you pay multiples of that. It's not fair. We need a system that will allow Manchester to flourish as the economic engine it should be. If I'm your governor, that's going to happen. Join us. Go to VolinskyNH.com. I'm endorsed by the NEA Teachers Union, 17,000 members, 350.org, Sierra Club on environmental issues, Ben and Jerry on campaign finance honesty issues, and many more. So thank you for this opportunity. Come join us. Be part of this effort to fix some of the problems that are happening and move New Hampshire forward.
Andy, thank you for joining us today. Again, my apologies for the technical difficulties. You've been extraordinary in trying to overcome them, and maybe someday we can do this again in a smoother format in terms of the audio. To the viewers, I've been talking to Executive Counselor Andru Volinsky, who's running for the seat of New Hampshire governor. Andy, again, thank you so much. Thank you, Executive Council Andru Volinsky, for your time today, and we all wish you good luck on September 8th. Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Stay well, be safe, you and Heidi both.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Your Ward 13 host, John Hopwood, has graciously given some of his television time to this feature, Meet the Candidates. I'm your host today, State Representative Connie Van Houten, and I'm joined by Representative Patty Cornell. At this time, it is my privilege to introduce New Hampshire State Senator Kevin Cavanaugh from District 16, who is also the Manchester Alderman from Ward 1. Senator, would you please introduce yourself a little bit? Tell us who you are.
Sure. First of all, Patty and Connie, thank you very much for having me on. It's great you're doing the show. So my name is Kevin Cavanaugh. I live in Ward 1 in Manchester and also represent District 16, which is Bow, Candia, Dunbarton, Hooksett, and Manchester Wards 1, 2, and 12. And born and raised in Manchester, never left, and proud to be a part of Manchester. And just really got involved, always been a part of sports and coaching. When I was little, my kids, I coached all their teams, and just saw a need when Joyce Craig was running for mayor, and that's when I stepped up and ran for, for Alderman in Ward 1. And just continue that, and just, my biggest issue, I think, is saw the need with public education and funding, and the lack of, and what we have to do. So that was kind of my driving force with that. And so a good friend of mine in 16, Scott McGilvery, he was another coach, great man, great family, knew his wife Patty well. And he won. I was glad to see that, and I helped him run in that election. And sadly, he passed away suddenly at, I think it was 52, if I remember correctly. And just really had a lot of the same ideals as Scott, and wanted to carry those on and really kind of keep his legacy going with that too. And so I really feel like I've done that, and I know a lot of his family I've met many times that say, so we're watching. So and I know his ideals are mine. So it's really what got me going, and here I am now. So it's we had that special election in 17, and then had to re-up for this first full term in 18, and running for re-election this year.
It is.
Another health benefit thing was the copay for insulin.
Oh,
Right.
yeah.
That's a really
That's the
important
best
thing.
$30, right? The best in the country,
Yeah.
right? And then
Yep.
Senator Feltus was the lead on that too, and he and Senator Rosenwald, Cindy is
Yeah.
just great with those issues too. I mean,
Yeah.
you guys know her. She's
Right.
served
Yeah,
with you
absolutely.
for so
Yeah.
long. Yeah, they're two. Those are great bills. It helps
Yeah.
a lot of people.
Yeah.
I can't remember the numbers now, but
Yeah.
the numbers of people that are using
Yeah.
insulin, it's just in the state is
Yeah.
huge.
And the cost before this for those people is just, if you don't have insurance, people weren't getting their insulin.
Yeah. Or then you heard stories when they came in as to
Yeah.
dividing up their medicine,
Yes.
so
Yeah.
when they really needed it, and it's just it's terrible. That's why
Yeah.
getting health care coverage and those
Yeah.
kind of costs down is very important.
And
And
one
even-
thing that got vetoed that I thought was absolutely horrible was the dental coverage for people on Medicaid. I mean, to me, that just doesn't even make any sense to veto something like that.
Yeah, it's like an ounce of
You know.
prevention, right? It's just
Yeah.
that
Right.
it's just we're
Right.
going to spend more money on not helping people
Yeah.
early on.
Yeah.
And it's like so many other issues with that, right? Any kind of healthcare
Oh,
issues,
yeah.
but
Yeah.
that just being one of them. It's just that's just. I mean, sometimes I think some people just look at the immediate cost when it's really look down the road, and
Yeah.
that cost is going to be a lot bigger.
Yeah, I'm looking at 684 relative to Medicaid to schools. That was signed by the governor. That's a
That was a good one
piece of-
too, especially in Manchester.
exactly.
That helped us a lot.
And
Yeah,
maybe
it
we
was-
should segue over to local issues with
Yeah.
that. So how did that impact us in Manchester to get the?
Oh, I wish I had that paperwork here. It was millions of dollars. That we
Yeah.
got, and it was very important because
Yeah.
we lost that money. Both of you sitting on the school board too.
I was only in the school board for 4 months. I
Well,
replaced.
there you are. You know that. But it's that helps so many kids, and in
Yeah.
the city we have such an amount of kids that are needing assistance. I mean, whether that or breakfast and lunches. I mean,
Yeah.
everything. So it really helped us a lot, and that was important. I'm very glad that was signed and went through.
Yeah.
We're kind of blurring the line here between state and local, so if you kind of just work with us and go
Yeah.
wherever we want to go with this one. You mentioned the COVID pandemic, which is so incredibly devastating to our world right now. And so much is impacting us here, including schools and things. Small business. I worry about them. I walk down Elm Street and I see them closing up. Where do you stand on the whole thing about how we can help small business, which is the backbone of so many of our communities?
It's the backbone of the economy in New Hampshire. It really is. I mean, the employees that it employees and families that it helps is incredible. And I was honored really to be on. I got a call from Commissioner Caswell, and when they were putting the governor's economic recovery task force, GERT, and that to me, you talk about going through commerce and business issues and insurance issues. I got to talk and meet so many small business owners from around the state, from every different industry, when they're kind of telling us how they can open safely and what we can do, and just giving those guidelines to HHS to either approve or change, and then to the governor to decide whether to sign or not sign. And I think that task force, I mean, we've met, I think the total is like 46 times so far. I don't know how many hours. We were meeting 3, 4, and 5 times a week in the beginning, 3-hour calls. But it was so important, and I met with some restaurant owners here in Manchester, and it was devastating to hear, because they were so close, or they didn't know if they would ever be able to open. And people put their life savings and their whole lives into these restaurants and small businesses, and it's just to see it open. I knock on wood, and hopefully we've done the right things slowly in New Hampshire. I mean, you never know what's going to happen, but you look at the numbers now. I think we're doing a pretty good job throughout the state, and it's again, really, to be on that was nice. And you don't know going on to these task force, because you have industry leaders, you have there was 4 senators, 4 state reps, 4 from each side, and we passed so many unanimous recommendations, and it was awesome to see, because there were times that we had to make changes, we had to meet in subcommittees on top of that, just to kind of iron out, okay, where are we, what can we live with, or what do we think is going to be kind of too overwhelming to either keep in or take out. So that with small business it's been incredible, and there's been a lot of, again, people around the state that you're dealing with over the phone and with Zoom calls, that you learn a lot about what they're going through, and how many employees are home and out of work. So it was very proud to be a part of that task force.
And we're proud to have your steady hand on that, because it is so important to us here in Manchester. Patty, you had a question.
One of the other things in Manchester, and I think it comes down from the state too, is the homeless issue. You know, in Manchester, it's big. I think a lot of it's mental health issues. It's a lot of other issues, but affordable housing is just not available in Manchester.
Right.
You know, do you have any ideas on that, or?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many things we could do with really, even the in-law apartments. But I mean, so
Yeah.
really first with the homeless, I think, and there's no easy answer to it. And I get a lot of complaints as an alderman about that. And it is. I think it's a mental health issue the first. We have 40 plus open beds right now. A lot of people don't want to go in beds. And
Yeah.
we've got to, this is one part I think the state has, I don't want to say any bad, because I think the Commissioner's done a good job, but I think they could have, Manchester's taking on the state problem. We really are. And we can't do that. We need that. And they have committed now to come in with counseling, more outreach, and more money. But it's a slow process, especially when people, I mean, it really threw a wrench into it when the CDC is telling us to keep everyone together, and that one came and really took off. But it's something we've got to address. We've got to get these people help. We've got to get into homes and off the street. And it's just, I'm not sitting here to say I have all the answers for it, that's for sure, because it's very complex with so many parts to it. But we've got to do everything we can to clean that up. It's not healthy for them. It's not healthy for the city. It's not healthy for the people that are staying there. And it's something we've got to really, I mean, I know Mayor Craig is front and center on it. She's leading this, and she's doing a great job. But it's just, and I know I'll get calls with it too, and people are frustrated. I'm frustrated. But it's something, it's got to be a priority for the city and the state to really work together to address this, because really Manchester, again, is really taking the brunt for the state's I don't want to, I mean,
Well, I think
they should have jumped in.
we provide services, so people come to Manchester to get the services, and then they're here.
Right.
And so, you know, and of course we provide the services because we want to do that.
Right.
You know, and other places who don't provide the services,
They're going to go where the services are.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we do it. And then
Yeah.
at some point we have to get them into saying you're not staying here on public property or harassing people on
Right.
the streets, or with break-ins and everything. And one of my biggest, I used to laugh about it, my biggest call I'd get of complaints are potholes, but it's not. I mean, it's a lot of homeless now, camps,
Yeah.
and it's on everyone's, There was one they thought was in Livingston. So the police went out and said there was kids that put up a lean-to, but everyone's thinking that. It's just that's the first thing you think, and it's just
Yeah.
we've got to do something that's got to be and it is a priority for everyone, the city and the state.
Yeah, and you're juxtaposing between the city and state, which is fantastic. I just want to remind the viewers that the masked man that you're hearing from is a man with two important roles in our lives. Actually, he is a senator from District. Is it 16?
16, correct.
Represents District 16 in the New Hampshire Senate, and here in Manchester, he sits in the seat of the Ward 1 alderman as well. So and of course, Patty and I are at the state as well, and we are dyed-in-the-wool Manchester cheerleaders and advocates, and
Right.
so we're bouncing back and forth.
And it is, they're so intertwined, and it's so many issues that pertain to, like I said, the airport homeless. It's not just Manchester,
Yep.
it's the state, it's everything that's combined with it. So, yeah, it's interesting, because I say the same thing. I love Manchester, and it's just talking it up all the time. It gets a black eye with a lot of things, but it's not comparable to most of the towns in the state. It's just because we have issues as a small city that most others don't. But it's just, I love it here. I love the people here. I love the pride people have in what we have. We just had Manchester North Hooks at Little League won the district championship, and it's just, two communities coming together. I love it. I'm proud to be here and proud to do anything we can to move it forward in a positive way.
Patty, I think we have time for another question. Is there one more that you wanted to throw out?
No. So you went over homelessness. How about schools reopening? Do you have any ideas on that? Or
Yeah,
it's a big one. We could
it's
talk
a
for an
big one,
hour.
that's right. Yeah, this is, and I think, I think you had to open. I think the only kind of setback I would say, I think we've got to look. I don't feel comfortable setting a date. I think we've got to look
Yeah.
at data like we've done. Keep the kids home for a while. If the numbers stay down, slowly come back in. I think the school board, I think Dr. Goldhart did a great job, and with Mayor Craig, and it's, but it's another tough one. We've got to do something to get it back, because even the socialization of kids.
Yeah.
My daughter, who's 19, is going back to college for her sophomore year. She's got she wants to go, but it's going to be, like she said, it's going to be kind of
Scary.
boring, a totally different experience. And my youngest son is going to be a senior at Central. So it's complicated. It's complicated, and we've got to help the kids. We have to help the teachers. The teachers are in such a tough spot, and I think we really have to let them prioritize. If they, so I know some that are caring for relatives, and they can't go into the school around all these kids, even if it's 2 days a week, and going back to care for their relatives. And there should be. We've done a lot with Stu for Work. We have. I represent the full-time professors for the community college system, and we're doing a lot of. Really, people have individual issues, whether they can or can't go back, and they've got to be addressed individually. We can't just make a blanket statement of saying everyone back, no one back, so we've got to work together. But the only thing I worry about is I think we've got to do that. Putting a date on the calendar, I think we've got to go with maybe look at the data leading up to that date and then make a decision. And hopefully we'll get there.
And the reality is, as you said, things evolve every day. Will there be a vaccine? Will there not be a vaccine? How safe is it in our school systems? It's just, there are so many things there. And I too applaud the efforts of the school board. I know as I watched the meeting the other night, my only thought was, I'm glad I'm not on that board. I could not have
Big
made
decisions.
that board vote. It was just
And you look at the
incredible.
survey that came out with the parents, it was pretty much split.
Yeah.
And it was
Right.
just-
Yeah.
But again, that shows we've got to treat it as individuals, who can and can't go back. And even if you're healthy, dealing with your own kids, how are you going to be in class when they're in class? So there's a lot of things we've got to look at.
Yeah, and I see the three of us sitting here, and I feel quite empowered as a citizen, as opposed to being a member of the legislature, but quite empowered as a citizen to know that people like you are going to be at the helm of the questions that have to be answered as we go through a time that's just unprecedented and doesn't have any answers clearly laid out for us. As we come into the home stretch, I just want to mention, I mentioned the incredible number of bills of great value and great virtue that you are involved in. As a Ward 1 alderman, and correct me if I'm wrong, you are on the following standing committees: Finance Committee Improvement as the chair, Human Resources Insurance, Lands and Buildings. You're also on special committees for airport activities, solid waste activities, alcohol and other drugs, and youth services, and possibly sleep every now and then as well?
Well, they don't meet all the time, so it's just a little easier. But there is a lot of committees on there, but it's just, I mean, we can usually go through a lot of that pretty quickly. But it's, again, I think you talk about how proud you are of things at the state level. I always comes back to I am anyway. I'm sure both of you, like from where you're from, and how you can help your local community and your friends and neighbors who you live with. Like even political signs. I don't want to put them in public property. I want to put them in someone's yard, so they're going to talk to their neighbors. And who is this person? Yeah, right. I think that means a lot. So I'm glad to do it. It's just I feel lucky. I really do that to have the chance to serve like that in both capacities. And it's an honor. It really is. And it's just I feel the same towards you two. It's great to have that representation of people that are level-headed, knowing what real people, working people are going through. And it's just I want to thank both of you for that too.
Well, as we come into our final few moments, because I know you have to leave, and we could do another 12 hours.
This is great. I'm glad to come.
A list of topics here that really, deserve their own hour each, probably. But as we close out at this point, let me just ask you a very generic kind of question without really any understanding of what our world will be like tomorrow, as well as into the future. What do you think our biggest challenges ahead will be, and what do you think your priorities or our priorities should be going forward? Major question, and I'm sorry to throw that at you, but we're running out of time.
Well, no, but I think it's this virus. I think right now we have to get a handle on that. We have to. What's going to happen if it spikes? So a lot of it's unknown. I think the answer is going to be a vaccine, like you say. Our world has changed, and it's just. We talked about that even with the schools and doing the construction work. It's just we have to look at things differently from that perspective, because we have to protect all of our citizens, all of our employees, state and city employees, and especially, like we said, more vulnerable long-term facilities. It's just I think that has to be everyone's priority to see how we get through it, and that's going to be, I mean, from the national level down to our local level. That's going to be very important.
Another quick yes or no question: are you running for re-election?
I am.
Absolutely.
Yes.
I'm very glad to hear that. I'm going to close things out at this time. I'm going to thank our guest, who is two people at one, Senator and Ward 1 Alderman Kevin Cavanaugh. His role in the city and the state are inestimable. We see him working every day, and we know the kinds of things that he's doing. To call him our senator, to call him an alderman in our city, it's just very important to us, but also to call him a colleague and a friend is something that I think I will say on behalf of both of us. Whatever you're off to do, it can't be as great as being here with us. But we're going to go to...
But thank you both so much, Liz. And it gets down to that personal level as friends, and I really do mean that. You've always been so supportive and everything, and it's just very nice. Thank you.